Hi everyone, I'm Craig from Grow Paradise, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can turn a ginger root like this into a young sprouting plant like this that we can grow into an enormous ginger plant that will give you a never-ending supply of ginger to use in your cooking year after year. Now these two plants that I'm growing here are actually ornamental ginger lilies that I've been growing outside in my UK tropical style garden for their beautiful and highly fragrant flowers. But they are in the same family and they look extremely similar to the plant that we can grow from this root that you can buy from the supermarkets. And I'll actually get to why this isn't a root at all in a little while. Now this belongs to a plant that's Latin name is Zingiber officiale, and that is part of a family of gingers that is over 1,300 plants wide. It is a diverse family, and there are numerous other plants in the family that have good cooking uses, like turmeric or haldi. It's delicious, used in cooking. I love using ginger in my curries. You can use it in teas and in medicine. So I'm going to show you the steps now to selecting the best ginger, growing it on, caring for it through the year, harvesting your ginger and protecting it through winter if you are somewhere that has colder winters than this plant might require. Now when you're selecting your piece of ginger from the supermarket, you're going to want to make sure the rhizome is as big as possible, because that's going to mean it's got loads of energy and loads of potential growth points. Now if there are smaller pieces, that's fine. Just make sure there are two of these. We're going to call them eyes. It's where the shoots will emerge from, and by having at least two, you're ensuring it's got the best possible chance of growing. Now, if you want to split that rhizome up into smaller sections with multiple growing points, you can cut your ginger rhizome. It will be bright orange when you first cut it. Allow it to callus over like it has here. It will dry over and heal itself, and then it's ready for us to start preparing to grow into our own ginger plant. Now I mentioned earlier that this isn't actually a root at all, despite the fact that so many people refer to it as ginger root. It's actually a rhizome, and a rhizome is just a swollen part of the stem from which new shoots can grow. Now these shoots that grow from that swollen stem look like stems in themselves, but even they are just pseudostems, much like in banana plants. It's just herbaceous material made up of old leaf culms that forms this long herbaceous shoot that grows up to about a metre and a half high before the gingers flower, from which you get this lance-shaped foliage that looks really great and ornamental in its own right. But we are going to be growing the rhizome, and remember, it's actually a swollen stem, not a root at all. Now the first step in how to grow your own ginger at home is to prepare your rhizome. Now the supermarkets are selling these rhizomes as a food. They don't want it to grow into a plant. It's not a garden centre after all. So they soak it sometimes in something called a growth inhibitor, and we just want to remove that. So you can either soak your gingers in some water like this, and that will help that growth inhibitor get washed off, or you can just run it underneath a tap, and that will remove anything that's preventing it from growing into a young, healthy plant. With that done, and it all washed off, we are ready to pot on this rhizome to start growing our own ginger at home. Now the natural habitat of so many species of ginger is warm tropical and subtropical forests, mostly in Southeast Asia. These plants will be growing on the forest floor in rich leaf litter underneath the partial shade of the canopy above, but the temperature will be warm, the humidity will be high, and there will be plenty of rainfall. So we need to recreate this environment to grow our own ginger plants at home. So one of the first things you're going to want to consider is what pot you're going to grow your ginger plant in. And I'd recommend getting something that's short and wide like this pot. And that's because the rhizome naturally wants to spread horizontally. So you don't need a deep pot for that root to go down, like if you were growing carrots or a root crop like that. You want this to be able to spread horizontally to get the best possible crop. So a short and wide pot would be best. Once you've decided on the container or pot in which you want to grow your ginger at home, then you need to decide on your potting mix. Now remember, they're from warm subtropical forests or tropical forests, so they're going to need soil that replicates that. So I'm going to recommend you could go for a nice peat-free mix of something that's water retentive, so it's going to hold moisture, but has enough grit or perlite or bark in there to enable water to run off, because they don't like sitting wet. They like to have moist soil that's going to emulate that tropical rainforest environment, but they don't want to sit wet because those delicious rhizomes will just rot away. So with our pot decided on, it's time to add that rich, moisture-retentive soil with added grit, perlite or bark to help drainage into the pot. Now I'm going to gently firm that down, and then I'm going to take my ginger. And now the rhizome has been soaked, it's been washed, I can see the eyes, the growing points, and they're sort of heading up this way. So I'm going to follow the lead of the rhizome. So I'm going to bury this down about an inch below the surface of the soil. Not really deep, because it needs to be close to the surface to trigger it into growth. About an inch, that's about 2.5 centimeters, and then just cover it over. Firm that down, and then it's time to give it a really good watering to get that soil nice and moist like we were talking about. Now, because gingers are from tropical and subtropical environments, they're used to warm temperatures, and they're going to need warmth to trigger that rhizome into growth. Now, if you've got a sunny windowsill or a propagator or somewhere warm, I'd recommend a minimum temperature of 20 degrees Celsius to force this rhizome into growth. We want it to encourage growth so that it can start putting out leaves like this, and then these leaves will photosynthesize from the sun, and they will feed all of the growth of more underground rhizome, which is the edible part of the plant that we are aiming to grow here. So that said, late winter and spring is the best time to plant up your ginger rhizome so that you can grow your own ginger at home, because we're then leading in to the hottest part of the year where those temperatures are going to be easily reached in a greenhouse or, like I say, a sunny windowsill. That's also going to allow a nice long season for that rhizome to develop and to give you the best possible harvest. Now, when ginger plants are grown in a container, in the right circumstances, in the right temperatures, in the right light, it usually takes about 8 to 10 months to harvest your ginger. Now, because ginger plants require quite a long season to get a good crop, if you are growing them in a part of the world that has colder autumns and winters and colder springs, you're going to want to bring them indoors somewhere warmer. So if you're lucky to have a greenhouse like I've got here, then you can bring them into the greenhouse just to elongate that growing season. Or you can move them indoors and grow them as houseplants, but just turn off the radiator that's nearest to them, because you're probably going to put them by a window, and by a window there's usually central heating. That's because although they love heat, they're not going to like the temperature fluctuations of a radiator. It's going to be so hot when it comes on and then dropping back cold before your home's heating comes back on. They like kind of a nice, rested, ambient temperature that's going to be just warm enough, and definitely warmer than outside. That's going to elongate the growing season. Now, if you do see any of the lower leaves like this start to brown off, just pick them off, that's fine. Sometimes the stems will die back to a dormant rhizome if the plant's feeling a bit stressed. That's absolutely fine. You can either leave that rhizome and allow it to grow the following year to get an even bigger harvest, or you can dig it up, split a piece off, use what you need, and then put the rest in the soil to allow the whole cycle to continue on. And you will have fresh ginger roots, not roots though, remember, rhizomes, fresh ginger rhizomes year after year that you can use in cooking, you can use in teas, and you can use in medicines. And it's as easy as that. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video teaching you how to grow your own edible ginger plants, and maybe you'll have a go at growing your own so that you have a never-ending supply of ginger year after year. If you did enjoy the video, please hit subscribe. It's the easiest way to support the channel. And I'd love to see pictures of what you're growing, so feel free to sign up to our growers forum at growparadise.social, where there is a global community of people who love growing plants like this and love sharing our passions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.